It is Locked On Jazz for the 19th of January. Oh my goodness, this is nuts. We're going to talk about it. Craziness. Jordan Clarkson appreciation, Lauri Markkanen love, late game watch Cleveland. What were you doing? It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are also, if you're not already there, available on YouTube. You can join the community, chat with them. Please subscribe wherever you do listen. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell. It gives us the little gets you the notification that the show is coming. This is insanity. We're 46 games into the NBA season. Your Utah Jazz, whose over-under for this season was, I think, 24.5, right? Like, I think NBA Vegas over-under. We're 48 games in the season, not 46. Some other people are 46. We're 24 and 24. We're 500. We're tied with the Warriors for 6th right now in the Western Conference. And we're getting better. No one in their wildest, craziest, outlandish dreams ever thought this was the case. And maybe you've gotten used to it during the season and now expect it. But this is nuts. Like, Will Hardy talks a lot about putting everything in perspective. Let's put this in perspective. It's January 19th. If we beat the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow, the Jazz exceed the Vegas over-under for the season. We're 500. And maybe the most important thing I'm saying, we're getting better. Maybe a lot better. Like, you start to look at some of the numbers that we've been dancing around with in regards to playing combinations and who's on the floor, and you eye test the people who are not playing well and productive, and some of our over-under numbers are certainly a little funky. There's no question of that. But some of our other numbers, when you start putting Lauri Markkanen and Mike Conley and Walker Kessler on the floor together in a 3-man lineup for the Utah Jazz, like, it's not funky. It's just super good. And you add Jordan Clarkson, and it's super good. And then you start playing with the bench units, and the rightful order of the basketball universe is kind of falling into place right now. A lot of this is because of Walker. Like, Walker has changed his ability to play center and allow everybody else to kind of do what they do and get us to be a half-decent defensive team is a game changer. An absolute game changer. We saw a team last night, certainly limited, short on what they're doing, just not go to the rim. In the last 5 games, again, some of the teams we've played, a little shorthanded, things like that, got it. We're the 12th best defensive team in the NBA. In the last 10 games, we're 22nd in the league defensively. Okay, we need, like, that's not great, but it's not 27th. And frankly, there is a moment in this where you start to, like, get into, like, 1 or 2 points is separating everyone. Like, the difference between being 5th and 22nd, or whatever it was, last 5 games where we're 4-1, being 5th, being 12th, and being 22nd is getting to be a pretty slim margin between the two. About 4 points. We're getting better. Lauri is ridiculous and getting better. Walker Kessler is just absolutely game-changing to who the Jazz are. He's really good. He's figuring it out defensively. He's really skilled offensively. And he allows Jared Vanderbilt to go play off the bench where Jared Vanderbilt's really good. He allows Lauri Markkanen to float between the 3 and 4, whether we want to have Malik Beasley on the floor or whether we want to have Kelly Olynyk back on the floor when it's time. He allows Colin Sexton, Colin Sexton's come off the bench and has been just great. Ochai Agbaji is added an element to this team in his development. We're better than we used to be because of Ochai Agbaji. Some of these numbers are, again, the sample sizes are super small right now, but our starting lineup last night of Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Malik Beasley, Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler in 92 possessions is plus 31. Okay, these sample sizes get small. 2 guys hit back-to-back threes. Things go a little funky there, and you can start to lose your bearings on it. But when Walker Kessler, Mike Conley, and Lauri Markkanen are on the floor together in, again, not very much, 353 possessions, we're plus 20 with an offense in the 99th percentile and a defense in the 98th percentile. That's real. Well, it's small samples. Put Jordan Clarkson in there, sample size gets smaller. Same thing, though, plus 21. You start to put together, playing guy lineups that actually make sense. So it's Conley, Clarkson, Beasley, Markkanen, and Kessler. Okay, well then put in Kelly Olynyk in that lineup with Clarkson, Conley, Markkanen, Kelly Olynyk, and Kessler. So you're starting Olynyk instead of Beasley. It's 55 possessions. We're plus 42. You bring Colin Sexton in off the bench instead of Malik Beasley for your first substitution. It's been a very, very small sample size. We're plus 41. These numbers are super small, but they all indicate we're getting better. Conley is figuring out how to play at 35 years old within his limitations. And has been, I think, remarkable. This team has gone now. Mike Conley's gone. And when Mike Conley came back and wasn't very good, we weren't very good. And when Mike Conley wasn't around, we weren't very good. Mike Conley's kind of figured this thing out a little bit. He hit some shots recently. His legs got to be feeling a little bit better. We have an easier travel schedule. The dude has not turned the ball over since January 10th. He's played little less than 90 minutes of basketball without a turnover. It's crazy. His last turnover, I was trying to find it today, was against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the third quarter. Donovan's return. The team understands who they are better. They understand Lowry's the guy. We've had all these stretches at different times in the year where we're like, how's Lauri not getting the ball? Well, the team's figured that out. They go, Lowry's the best player on the floor. It took Lauri a little time to figure out he was the best player on the floor. That's an interesting concept. I talked to Ty Lue about this a little bit last night. We always talk about these guys as though when they come into the league that they have to figure out how to play when they're now on the floor with other best players, right? That basically every single one of these guys was the best player on their team for their entire lives. And now all of a sudden they're on this team and there's 5 other, 6 other, 7, 8 other guys who were the best players. And now you have to figure out. Lauri actually went the opposite way. Lauri had to figure out how to be the best player again on this team. He learned it with the Finnish national team, and now he's understanding completely who he is as the best player on this team. He's making plays that are, the slam dunk over Zubac last night is ridiculous. The follow 3 is ridiculous. The 3 in the corner where we were talking about pop time, where he catches the ball up at his forehead and lets it fly is I don't know how he does that. For 7 feet tall to catch that with that release time. We got a great question during the broadcast from a guy who was like, what about Kyle Korver? Whose pop time is faster? And Ron Boone said on that shot, Lauri Markkanen's pop time is faster. Has everybody noticed what Lauri Markkanen's doing his last 13 games? He's going 50, 40, 90 while averaging 31 points a game. 50% from the field, 42% from 3, and 92% from the free throw line, while averaging 30 points and 10 rebounds. That's crazy. That's for 30% of the season. We've played 48 games. That's 13 games. So we're getting better. And when Kelly Olynyk comes back, we might have 240 quality minutes. Now, the trade deadline can undo all of this, obviously. But when Kelly Olynyk comes back, with Agbaji playing 21 good minutes a night, like if you look at last night's minute distribution, and it's a little short because it was a blowout, but like Kelly Olynyk comes back and takes Rudy Gay's 13 minutes and probably takes some of Vando's minutes. Agbaji holds at 21, or probably Agbaji plays 24, Sexton plays 25. The other guy's minutes probably hold. Like we suddenly have 240 minutes a night of quality rotation minutes. Like this is crazy. Don't lose sight. Don't lose, like, we're about to play. We're going to cross over our Vegas over-under win number by the 50th game of the season. It's absolutely insanity, and it should be loved every second. One of the guys I didn't even mention in here is Jordan Clarkson and what he's doing, and I don't want it to get lost. We did our Mike Conley appreciation yesterday. We're doing our Jordan Clarkson appreciation next. Today's show is brought to you in part by our good friends over at Intercap Lending. That's my good friend Steve Carter and all he brings to the table. Intercap is our own personal loan lending officers. Steve Carter is our own personal loan officer. Excuse me, I'm about to choke on something. And does amazing work for us. They actually have a really neat program they're doing right now, which is called FreeFi. And the concept is, though mortgage rates did just finally drop a little bit, by the way. Here's the concept for them. The program has been nicknamed FreeFi. It's a program where anyone that buys a house using Intercap Lending from now until March of this year will have the ability, when interest rates dip down, to take advantage of a refi, and will waive all lending fees for the refi. So what that means is they will cover all processing and underwriting costs. They do want me to make sure you know that you still have escrow taxes and insurance and title fees will be part of the refi, but there'll no longer be any lender fees. So they really want to do it. So if you're on the fence right now of buying with rates being a little higher than you've been used to, and you know refi down the road is the answer, well, refi will be free until March of 2025. So that gives you 2 years to refi with us in advance of this program. Steve Carter's our own personal loan officer. He's just remarkable. I could not recommend him strongly enough because he's just been a pleasure to deal with. So feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com and I'll just set you up. Or if you'd like to, you can contact Steve directly yourself and not involve me. 385-800-8528. That's 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com and make sure you tell Steve Carter you were Locked On Jazz, because that gets you your Intercap Lending discount. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar, the delicious treat where you don't want all the fat and calories and you get a Built Bar out of it. Just like this one sitting right here. Here, what do I have here today? I have a cookie dough Built Bar sitting right here waiting for me. I don't even think it's a puff. I just think it's a regular one. And they are so good. 100% real chocolate. That's right. Real chocolate. And you can go to Built.com with the promo code LOCKEDON to get your 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. But now you can also go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section. Grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-box cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Or you can choose to go to Sam's Club for a 13-bar box with hit flavors, brownie, batter, and churro. It's all Built Bar. And promo code Locked On if you do it at Built.com. Thanks so very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Your second listen should be Locked On Sports Today, our 22-minute recap of all things sports, so that you can catch up with everything that's going on, get ready for the playoff weekend, all the rest when you might have a job or things that get in the way. Tyler Gibb does stats for us. We have a great crew. Will and Kristen and Dominic and Leaf all do great work for us. Tyler Gibb had a note in his stats pack yesterday that jumped out to me about Jordan. So first of all, like when Lauri was out, Jordan was just incredible and efficient and doing all sorts of stuff. And then he had a note that just kind of blew me away. And that was that Jordan is shooting 50% or better from the field. This was going into last night. In 8 of his last 11 games. Jordan Clarkson. Jordan the Gunner Clarkson. Jordan's, some people are, as Luke Walton once said, some people are open when they get off the bus. Jordan thinks he's hot when he gets off the bus. This is one of the players who is not efficient at all. And all of a sudden has linked efficiency. Last night he did not accomplish it. He went 5-11, 2 of 5-3. Jordan Clarkson's last 12 games, he's shooting 50% from the field, while diming out 4 assists and scoring 23 points a game. He's only shooting 34% from 3, but that's kind of what he does. This guy has been so good this year. 8 assists against Chicago. 9 assists against Sacramento. 6 assists against Detroit. Jordan Clarkson? 9 dimes against Golden State. 9 dimes against Chicago. 10 dimes against Golden State. That's reading opponents, understanding how they defend you, what you do, and you suddenly see the same teams come up. He's torched the Clippers 3 times this year. It was a little calmer last night. Didn't need him. It's really incredible to see the evolution of this guy's game this year. And it's a tribute to Jordan and how much he's evolved. His 2-point shooting, the 2 things that are interesting to me about it, if you actually kind of go look at how he's playing and what he's doing, there aren't dramatic differences, like statistically, and yet your eye test knows he's playing a totally different game. So the biggest number that's different is, he started 47 games. And the last time he started regularly was 15-16, his second year in the league. So that's a big adjustment. The second one is he's playing 5 minutes more a night, which is a lot. He's playing about 10 minutes more a night than he did in Cleveland. Okay, well and he's not a turnstile defensively right now. Like, that's a pretty incredible thing for him to have done that, play that many more minutes, and still be putting out on a defensive level. He's actually shooting a little bit fewer 3-point shots percentage-wise of shot attempts than he was before. He was shooting 54% of his shots as threes. He's down to 46%. And yet, his free throw rate is through the roof. Now, some of that's 3-point shooting. He's getting fouled, and that's why his 3-point rate is down, which is interesting. Usually it's the other way around, that your rim rate or something else is down. But his free throw rate is way up. His assist rate is from 14% so percentage of teammate field goals a player assists while they're on their floor. He was at 14%. He's now at 21. Turnover rate's up a little bit. His usage rate is actually up from last year. And yet it feels completely differently. Only a tad. And that's maybe, to me, what's most impressive about Jordan right now. Is that all of these things I just said just feel and look differently than the way he's playing. Like, the idea that his usage rate is up. The idea that he's actually shooting close to the same percentage. The idea that he's, other than assists, nothing's dramatically different. And yet his game feels tremendously different. His turnovers are actually up a little bit, I think. Like, way up. But he's just playing better team basketball, better understanding of who he is. His shot distribution is not wildly different, other than, frankly, he's taking a few more shots from 10 to 16 feet than he's taking his threes, probably, again, because he can foul him. He's percentage of field goals assisted, so is he playing off his teammates better? No. Last year was 22.1. This year it's 22. His threes are a little more assisted. But you can feel it. And then these over 50% is something really different. We mentioned a moment ago, I did want to go to, and we'll do late game in a second. Cleveland had just maybe one of the worst late games I've ever seen to lose to Memphis last night. And I love JB Bickerstaff, but holy smokes, that was bad. It happens, right? Late game's hard. The Lauri Markkanen, quick release 3 right side. Lauri Markkanen dunk on the open court on Zubac, or actually it was a half court set. Lauri Markkanen 3 on the next possession. That skill set is astronomical. Absolutely astronomical. We'll do Ask LOJ tomorrow, and there'll be some good questions on that because there just are not a lot of guys in the world who can do that. Anthony Davis is probably one of them. And then Kevin Durant, probably another, but he's just so much smaller. I mean, weight-wise, but he can probably, okay, so let's go. Let's give it, I mean, he's the greatest offensive player probably ever to play the game. Unless Jokic just become that. And then we're done. Lauri is still tapping into this. Like, it's interesting to see Will Hardy kind of talk about Lauri right now with this idea, like, you know, we're not entirely sure. Like, there's this, hey, we saw him play in Finland and we thought he could do some great stuff, and then, and like, I give him credit like that, and I'm sure that's who they want. He's 7 feet tall, he's 25 years old. Like, now we're into a different stratosphere of like, wait a sec, what else can he do? His season averages are silly. His recent stretch, 50, 40, 90, and 30, is absurd. And the way he's doing it, and the different array of things he's doing, and the different ways you can get him the ball, and power and outside shooting, I wouldn't even say finesse. I think he's lost any finesse in this game at all, which is fine. But he's got a deft touch from 3 that makes him pretty awesome. So, it's wild to see what Lauri's doing right now. That play sequence I wanted to highlight. All right, late game watch. For those who don't know, my experiment this year is I'm trying to watch about the last 7 or 9 minutes of every close game in the NBA. They've been limited recently. We just haven't had close games. And so I got 3 in last night that we'll talk about. Kings, Lakers, Denver, Minnesota, and Memphis, Cleveland. And watched them all after I got home last night. So late game watch is coming up as we continue on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you in part by betonline.net. BetOnline, odds, news, scores, all the rest for you. If you want to get into the weekend action, there's some big lines to play around with this weekend in the NFL games. As you've got the 9-point favorite Chiefs against Jacksonville. You've got the 7.5-point Eagles favorites against the Giants, both at home. And then the Buffalo's, the good games on Sunday. Buffalo, 5.5-point favorite now over Cincinnati, and San Francisco, a 3.5-point favorite over the Cowboys on that. NBA team wins regular season. They don't have the Jazz on the board because we've passed our over-under already. Yes, that's right. You can still bet a bunch of other teams over-unders, but literally we have surpassed it. If you want to bet on the Jazz to make the playoffs, we're plus 150 to make the playoffs, minus 180 to not make the playoffs. So they still think we won't likely to make the playoffs. The next player to score 60 in a single game has a fun little bet going. They have Luka Doncic at plus 450, Steph Curry at plus 500, and Embiid at plus 650, Giannis at 800, Ja at plus 800. That's all at our friends over at betonline.net, where the game starts. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. Remember, it's NBA game to game is your recap of the night's action. You can get it every night at Locked On NBA. It's 1-minute snippets from each of our hosts, except for John Krause of the Celtics. Then it's a 2-minute snippet. And giving you a breakdown of what happened that night in the arena, and then collection of all the games. It's kind of a fun show. All right, 3 late game watches last night. Lakers, Kings. Kings didn't have Sabonis. Lakers are awful. Worse than I thought. And really, Russell Westbrook's awful. Like, really, really awful. He shot 2 air balls in the final 5 minutes of the game last night. Drove to the lane 3 other times with no idea where he's going. He's really awful. I don't know how they're playing him. Maybe because the other guys they're playing are Max Christie, Wenyen Gabriel, and Patrick Beverley. It's incredible, that roster. LeBron's not blameless here. He's not really able to beat guys one-on-one without power anymore. He left Kevin Huerter for a wide-open 3 on a key possession, then pointed another guy to get out. The Lakers are getting deep into the shot clock in every possession because they don't have anyone who can beat anybody one-on-one, and they just kind of play isolation, and then no one is actually able to beat anyone. The Kings, without Sabonis, really could have had a hard time figuring out what they were doing offensively. They kind of went Barnes at the post, at the nail on an ISO on Patrick Beverley, and he scored an and one, which was probably, one of the bigger plays of the game. So they're kind of answering because Fox and Herter couldn't get going, and they were having a hard time. Fox just was having a normal night. Herter was taking some bad shots. A lot of bad shots in the end of this game. Kings should have kind of run away with this game. Kings are third in the West now, by the way. Right? Aren't I right on that? Kings are third in the West after their win last night? Yeah, Kings are tied with the Pelicans, who've lost 7 of 10 because of their injuries, with 5 straight wins, now third in the West. 25 and 18. Kind of crazy. Like, you look at that roster, I don't think, it's funny, you look at us, and I don't think the Kings are a dramatically better roster than ours. Like, Lowry's just as good as Sabonis, and start piecing us together. Fox is pretty good, but, they're playing well and winning a lot of games. We have a nice homestand. Let's see what we do with it. That game ended actually on a clear path foul. Like, one of the young Lakers made a clear path foul. Just so you know, you cannot have a transition take foul in the final 2 minutes, despite what people are saying. Denver versus Minnesota last night, so no Gobert in this game. And actually playing Luka Garza against Jokic at one point. Jokic just makes every play imaginable. Like, we think about him as passing. We think he grabbed an offensive rebound over the back of Garza that was a key play in the game. It's interesting how the Nuggets are doing things. They have Aaron Gordon guarding the best defensive player, so he was guarding Anthony Edwards in this game. The Jokic-Murray pick and roll is getting better and better and better. It was really clunky early in the year because Jamal didn't look right. Jamal's looking better and better. I think he'll be even better after the All-Star break. And so they were getting Kyle Anderson caught into the switch every single time to try to take advantage of him. It's interesting. Denver doubled. We talk about doubling versus not doubling. Denver threw a surprise double at Minnesota at Anthony Edwards and led it to a really, really good defensive rotation from Denver, but also a shot clock violation on Minnesota because they just didn't seem apt to how to react to it and seem surprised. Frankly, Minnesota leads this game 120-118. Chris Finch has a weird, unsuccessful challenge and then leaves himself with no timeouts left. And then Minnesota doesn't score for the final 2:51. Without Finch being able to call a timeout and run a play or anything else, they go from up 118-117 with 2:51 left to losing it 122-118. And don't score for the final 2:51 of that game. Finch used his final timeout early on an unsuccessful, and I didn't think a very well-advised challenge, particularly with no timeouts left. I didn't think it was worth it. And people just don't know how to use the challenge. It's crazy. It's complicated. It's really, really complicated. And there's a lot, just to me, it seems like there's just a huge risk to end up losing that timeout on when you should challenge and when you shouldn't. It's pretty easy from my seat to critique. I don't have to make the decision. I can analyze it afterwards every time. But I thought that was interesting. Minnesota's, without Karl Anthony Towns, and then they're closing with Naz Reid because no Rudy Gobert, but, an inability to actually make any plays in the final 2:51 of that game seemed problematic to them. All right, Memphis-Cleveland was really interesting. Dillon Brooks was guarding Darius Garland, and Isaac Okoro is guarding Ja Morant, and then neither of them can shoot. So you got to slow down Garland, you got to slow down Morant, but neither Dillon Brooks or Isaac Okoro can shoot. Isaac Okoro actually makes a 3 late, but he's a really bad shooter. Dillon Brooks is a really inefficient offensive player. And it was interesting, you're sacrificing so much to have that non-shooter on the floor, but you have to try to stop these guys. Memphis is running something interesting late in the game. They're not necessarily bringing Steven Adams up to pick for Ja Morant because he's so fast and so good. He just beats his man. And then Adams sets a pick on his guy who he's guarding, who would be the help. Right? So Ja's at the top. Ja beats his man because Ja's unguardable. And then Adams flips his pick, wherever his man is, he flips his pick to whatever side Ja's going on. So the big down low can't, and that pick's being set at 5-6 feet, can't come and help. Morant's amazing. I mean, Ja's great, but it's a really interesting play, and he and Adams have kind of figured it out. And it's a neat little play. It also means if you're going to double Ja, it's going to be a little complicated how you bring it. I was really surprised. Memphis brought Steven Adams up on a high pick, kind of surprising Cleveland with Adams defending up at about 30 feet. Taylor Jenkins did the best job I've seen of changing up defenses late in game of any coach all year on a bunch of stuff. He surprised them on multiple times. Cleveland's close is horrendous. Cleveland inbounds under the basket with 27 seconds left in the game, up 1, and can't get the ball inbounds. But more than that, nobody ever came to the ball. Like, if you go look at the play, it's not like they missed an open guy or somebody didn't get open. Like, I don't know what they were running. The ball, nobody ever got it. Then Memphis takes the lead, and Cleveland has 2 timeouts, I think, and doesn't call a timeout, down 1. Okay, that's debatable. But Darius Garland walks the ball up the floor as though he's playing a tie game looking for the final shot for the win. You're down 1. You've got to get up the floor as fast as possible, try to score, have enough time for an offensive rebound. If you miss, foul and keep the game alive. He walks it up. JB Bickerstaff runs out, gets 1-4 flat, brings Jared Allen up for a high pick. They kind of pseudo double it. But even weirder is Darius Garland drives right into another guy. They have no floor spacing. He's now doubled. They flip. They never get a shot off. And they didn't use a timeout. And they didn't run a play. And they walked it up the floor. It was ugly. Late game is hard. Late game is super hard. So that was an interesting to watch. All right, that's our late game watch. There really have not been a lot of late game close games. The only one I've missed recently is Toronto. New York played a close one. Atlanta-Dallas was not close last night, but I want to watch it because I want to see how Dallas is losing these games. The Luka stuff's super interesting to me. I think there's a little smoke to where that, or a little fire to where that smoke is. The night before, by the way, there just was not a close game. Milwaukee beat Toronto by 8. Clippers lost to Philly by 10. Denver beat Portland by 9. Those games never got close. And then the night before that, there was actually a bunch of blowouts on the 16th. The only one was Toronto-New York double overtime. I never got to, so I'll try to get to it before that. And then I did watch the end of Philly-LA before they played us, so I think I've caught up on everything else. Thank you very much for tuning in today to Locked On Jazz. Ask LOJ tomorrow. Send in your questions on Twitter with the hashtag AskLOJ. Thanks very much. Have a great day.